Earlier, I spoke about all of this with Chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Senator Chuck Grassley. Let's start with Judge Kavanaugh and get your thoughts on that. So the Democrats are very upset that 100,000 documents are being withheld, basically due to executive privilege. In fact, Chuck Schumer tweeted this on Saturday, saying, "We're witnessing a Friday night document massacre," he called it. President Trump's decision to step in on the last moment and hide 100,000 pages from the records is not only unprecedented in the history of SCOTUS noms, it has all the markings of a cover-up. Amy Klobuchar, here she is on Meet the Press, talking about some of the documents that she saw the contents of, and she thinks other people should too.
You could ask some very interesting questions about these documents that I'm unable to even say because I'm not able to make them public.
So why are they being withheld?
Yeah, I've told every member of the committee that if they have some documents that under the Presidential Records Act cannot be made public for personal reasons or for presidential reasons, that all they have to do is ask us and we'll get those documents. And it happens that Senator Klobuchar asked for about 12 pages of documents. She has them. She'll be able to ask questions based on those. No other senator has asked for any documents whatsoever.
So she will be able to raise what she read in there and ask questions based on it. So
yes.
It's not being hidden.
No.
So she's not telling the truth there.
And the only thing that would be different is if there's something in there that needs to be secured, then we would have to close the doors and get people out and have it asked in executive session. But she's going to be able to ask those questions.
All right. And Dick Durbin yesterday was talking to Chris Wallace. He said, you know, it's unprecedented to only get 6% of the documents with regard to the work that Judge Kavanaugh did when he worked in the White House, both as the secretary to the president and as counsel.
That 6% is of what the archivist said is possibly going to be a total number that would be available. But because of computer software and the elimination of duplications and for other reasons, there's a much smaller number. For instance, I originally said back in July there might be a million pages available, getting rid of duplicates and for other things that you don't need. We have it down now to about 488,000 pages. But remember, this is more documents than the last 5 Supreme Court nominees have had total. If you add them all together, this is more documents. So it's just false to say.
Well, Democrats would say that's because he has a much deeper paper trail.
Well, of course he does. Yes.
He worked in the White House for a long time.
So they ought to say, praise the Lord. We've got more to ask for. Besides, don't forget, 307 opinions he wrote. And both Schumer and Leahy have said, like Leahy said this in case of Sotomayor, we know what you stand for because you've got a lot of opinions. That's the best basis for making your judgment if you ought to be on the Supreme Court. Well, Kavanaugh has been on the circuit court for 12 years and has a massive number of pages, I think 16,000 pages of decisions he's written. That's the best way to make a decision whether you should be on the court. So I think you're hearing from a lot of people that can't find anything wrong with the qualifications of Kavanaugh, and so many Democrats have said even before he was nominated they were going to vote against anybody that was on that list. Right. So the bottom line is, how much more do you need to know to vote no?
Good question. One of the potential hot button areas is going to be his take on whether or not a sitting president can be indicted. He went after President Clinton hard when he worked for Ken Starr, and then he later said a president who is concerned about an ongoing criminal investigation is almost inevitably going to do a worse job as president. So doesn't that contradict the stance that he took with President Clinton?
I think those statements say exactly what we want on the Supreme Court. Somebody in his instance said Congress needs to legislate in this area. He's not a person that's going to be on the court to fill in the details that Congress left vacant. That's not his job. He's not a super legislator. He's supposed to interpret law. So he's telling Congress, fill in the details. He's not saying a president is above the law. He's saying that when you're president of the United States, you might not be prosecuted, but as soon as they get out being president of the United States, they can be prosecuted.
All right, I want to go to a tweet that you sent out, and we'll put this up. It says, "At POTUS and at FLOTUS, my prayer is that our president can be as disciplined in his discourse and speeches like the last 2 weeks before his election. Then we will be successful in the next 2 months like he was successful." And you saw the what he just said about Jeff Sessions. I read it as we came into the segment here. It doesn't sound like he's listening to you.
Well, he needs to think in terms of what did it take to win the election, because going up to about 3 weeks before the election, it didn't look like he was going to win. And then he followed a very disciplined approach to it and got over the hump. And he can help the Republican Party a lot by being the same disciplined person coming up to the midterm election.
I thought it was interesting that you also employed the help of the First Lady in that tweet as well. You wrote it to both of them.
Barbara Grassley has a lot of influence on me. I assume that Mrs. Trump has a lot of influence on him.
All right, what about Jeff Sessions? Do you think he should lay off, or should he let Jeff Sessions go?
Well, I think, for one thing, this is the president's choice. I have always said that a president should be able to have who he can be comfortable with. I consider Jeff Sessions a very personal friend. I think that he could be more aggressive in running the department.
Are you surprised that the prosecutions are going forward against Chris Collins and Duncan Hunter during the run-up to the midterm election?
Not because maybe they didn't do something, maybe they did something wrong, but the reason why is I thought that the ethics or the standards within the Justice Department is that after getting close to election, you didn't prosecute people, you prosecuted them after the election. So you didn't interfere with the election.
You're also critical of Jeff Sessions on this.
The president was. I don't know whether I'd be critical of Sessions on this, because he expects his people he puts in as U.S. attorneys to do their job. It's just my understanding it's contrary to what the Justice Department normally does, things that you don't do things that would influence an election.
Senator Grassley, thank you for being here. Good to see you tonight.
Thank you.